Election Yard here on the evening of Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. Final results are coming in from the 7th Congressional District of Tennessee. This was a special election for a Republican House seat that is somewhat based in Nashville, but also takes in a lot of counties in west central Tennessee. This one was won by the Republican candidate Matt Van Epps. So the Republicans in recent weeks were kind of sweating out this special election. An Emerson poll came out about a week or so ago, which showed the Democratic candidate Afton Bain only 2 points down in the race. We're going to put the results that we have now on the screen, and it looks like Matt Van Epps is going to end up winning the race by about 9 points. But keep in mind, Donald Trump won this district by about 22 points a year ago, and the Republican who previously represented the district, Mark Green, he won by 21 just a year ago. So Democrats had some hope in this special election that maybe they could, if nothing else, make it competitive. They did do that, although they ultimately did fall short of winning the seat. We can try to get a little bit into some more of what this might mean, although I will start with the caveat that when you've got a special election, you don't normally want to read too much into it, but there are actually some reasons why maybe you could take a little bit more from this one than you would other special elections, but we will get into that. So like I said, right now with almost all the vote in, there are still a few more votes still out there to be counted at the time that we recorded this, but it looks like Van Epps is going to win this thing about 54 to 45%. So Afton Bain, the Democrat, her district incorporates parts of the city of Nashville, which is in Davidson County. Davidson County came out big for Afton Bain. She did really, really well in the Davidson portion of this district. She lost in every other county. But one of the things that you would note if you looked at the results is that every single county in the district shifted blue between the 2024 presidential election and now, just 13 months later. So what do I mean by that? Let's look at the numbers. So Davidson County was 20 points more Democratic than this district voted in the presidential election 13 months ago. Then Montgomery County, that's where Clarksville is. That was a 10-point shift to the Democrats. Robertson County, which is where Springfield, Tennessee is, went about 7.5 points more Democratic. Dixon County, 11 points. Cheatham County, that went 12 points. That's a county to the west of Nashville. Hickman County, about 8. Humphreys County, about 12. Wayne, about 7. Decatur and Benton, about 9. And Houston County, about 12. So you're definitely seeing some blue shifts. Some were smaller than others. It seemed like, for example, Robertson County, only 7.5 points. I think Afton Bain needed more of an overperformance there. And look, we're at a point looking at these special election results where you're saying a 7.5 point shift to the Democrats is a disappointing result for the Democrats. But if she was going to overcome that huge deficit, and I mean, look, this was always going to be an uphill climb for the Democrats. When we did our preview article on this race a few weeks ago, we were clear to say that she was not the favorite in this race. And of course, she didn't end up winning, but she did end up doing some good things here. So if you're a Democrat, that's one reason to be buoyed by this election result. And we will get more into some other reasons why. But just looking at the county shifts across the district, the only one we don't have any data on at the time of this recording was Williamson County. Although actually it just popped up as I'm doing this. It looked like it shifted about 7 points towards the Democrats. So good, but you know what? If you're going to overturn a 21-point deficit, the Democrat lost the district by 21 points last time. If you're going to overturn that, you do need to do better than that, but I'm sure you'll be happy that every single county in the district shifted bluer, and especially Davidson County. Afton Bain won it by 56 points, whereas Kamala Harris only won it by 36. In 2024, these same precincts in 2024. So she definitely moved the needle to the blue team in every single county in the district. Unfortunately for her, she needed to overturn a 21-point deficit. So she got a lot of the way there, but clearly not enough. So what would it take for a Democrat to win a district like this based on the results that we're seeing now? Well, obviously they need a big number out of Davidson County, which is Nashville, which she got. But you're thinking too, you're going to probably need to flip a county like Montgomery County, and you're going to need to do a lot better in a place like Williamson County. If you don't do that, then you're not going to overcome those very red counties in the western part of the district. So you can see that it was always going to be tough for Bain to flip this seat, but I think even just the fact that it was kind of close in the end, and Republicans had to pour a lot of money and send in some of their heavy hitters to try to save the seat. And it might have actually helped them out here, because the election day vote that we saw here was much redder than people thought it was going to be compared to the early vote. So that late push by the Republicans, it might have helped to save the seat. But I will tell you one thing. This was, at the end of the day, about a 13-point shift towards the Democrats from the 2024 presidential election. And here's why that matters. When we did our preview, we had suggested, because special elections do tend to have lower turnout. And you think about this one too. This was a special election as we're getting into the holiday season. Christmas is in a little over 3 weeks. Thanksgiving was last week. Early voting was open up until the day before Thanksgiving. People were getting ready to travel. It is now the holiday season. You would think that this special election, despite the fact that it was becoming a nationalized election, you would think that it would have modest turnout. And I was thinking too that if the Republicans underperformed here, that they might be able to just point and say, well, it was a special election, turnout was lower, you can't really compare apples and oranges. But this is a hopeful part for Democrats here. Turnout was not low in this special election at all. In fact, at the time I do this recording, the total number of votes counted in the 7th district in the special election was about 180,000. If you go back to the 2022 midterm elections, when the Republicans flipped the House, this district had about 180,000 votes. So in this special election, you had midterm election turnout levels, which for a special election, that is very, very high. Obviously, it's nowhere near presidential levels. That was over 320,000 votes. But you would go into this thinking that turnout would be a lot lower, but no, it wasn't. We had midterm level voting in this district, in this special election, in December, and still shifted 13 points towards the Democrats. So you do want to be careful for any special election at any level. You do want to be careful not to read too much into it. But I think with this one, the fact that there was such a large shift, and it is following a trend of special elections all year. There's been the special elections in Arizona and in Florida and in Virginia, for example, and now this one in Tennessee. There have been shifts towards the Democrats in all of them so far. So this one is continuing the trend that we're seeing. And of course, you can't forget the fact that just a month ago, the Democrats slam dunked victories in both Virginia and New Jersey. The Virginia race was never really in doubt, but the New Jersey one was considered to be a close race, and it ended up not being close at all. So the Democrats electorally had a pretty good year in 2025. Now we'll see if it carries over into 2026. But again, just the fact that this special election had about the same number of votes as the last midterm election here, and it still shifted that much bluer, that is definitely going to be something that Republicans need to be very, very cautious about. Now, it obviously wasn't all bad for the Republicans. The good news for them is, A, they won. They didn't lose a seat that they won by over 20 points just a year ago. The level of embarrassment and fear and horror that would have rained upon them if they had lost this seat, I can't even put into words. It would have just been an enormous, enormous loss if they had lost this seat. So at least they can say they didn't lose it. And maybe you could also say it actually wasn't as close as maybe some people had thought. Van Epps did end up winning by about 8 or 9 points. We'll say it was about 9 points. So, yeah, it could have been worse. That's the thing. It could have been worse. Some people were thinking it was going to be worse. So, yeah, it could have been worse, but it also could have been a whole lot better. So, Republicans might be just taking a sliver of relief from this, but really just down the line, looking at the results, like, this isn't good. A 13-point shift to the opposition in a ruby red state in what had previously been considered a ruby red district. I mean, it's not good. And it was, for a special election, a high turnout election. Now, our closing point here. Again, you don't want to read too much into any special elections, but if you are an endangered Republican incumbent looking to run for re-election in 2026 to the House of Representatives, let's say you're Juan Ciscomani in the 6th District of Arizona, you're Jen Kiggins in the 2nd District of Virginia, Mike Lawler, New York 17, Marionette Miller Meeks, Iowa 1, Tom Kaine, New Jersey 7, a Republican in a close district. You're not only seeing the results of this race, but you're seeing what happened in November in Virginia, in New Jersey, and Georgia, and other places. And you're seeing what's happened in special elections for the House down the line all year, since the beginning of the year. You're looking at all of that body of work together and saying, I might lose next year. I'll tell you, I wouldn't be too comfortable seeing the way things are going if I were an endangered Republican in a close seat. And now you can see why in places like Texas and North Carolina, and there was obviously a push to do it in Indiana, as well as other places, to try to gerrymander the maps to try to preserve as many Republican seats as possible. Because the underlying currents right now are definitely flowing towards the Democrats. Now, the Democrats obviously have their own issues that they are contending with. The Democratic brand, if you look at polling, is not as popular as maybe they would like it to be. But there is no question that electorally, things have been moving in their direction throughout the course of 2025. They definitely had a good year, all things considered, when it comes to elections. And will definitely, going into 2026, take some signs of hope with them. But if you're a Republican incumbent in the House, in any of those districts I listed, as well as a number more where the margins were close in 2024, despite the fact that the Republicans won a trifecta, you're looking at Tennessee 7, as well as all the other evidence over the course of the year, and you're saying, uh-oh. So, again, you don't want to read too much into one special election, but there is a body of work. There is a trend that is being built, and it is not one that lends itself to those Republican incumbents feeling very safe. And remember, too, the Virginia one, like I mentioned, Jen Kiggins, and then you got Rob Whitman in the 1st District, for example. The Democrats are taking over Virginia next month, and they might very well cram through a gerrymander of their own. So Kiggins and Whitman, they might be gone anyway. But even if they're not, I wouldn't feel too good about the way the currents are moving in the United States right now politically. So we'll just have to see how things continue. But that was the last big American election of note in 2025, and it's on to 2026 now. And for more on the 2026 elections, electionyard.com. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.